Alright, welcome back. So in the last video we studied the basics of arrays, about what they basically are, how you make an array, and how you access the different elements in an array. And then we saw the two basic types, two basic, functions which are dot. One is a function and one is a simple property of an array, which is dot length and the push function. So array name dot length gives you the length of the array, and array name dot push and then something in the brackets helps you push elements to the array, like add elements to the array, right? Yeah. So in this video we are going to see how you can traverse through an array, right? So what does traversing through an array mean? That if I refresh this page and I open up my console, I see I have an array here which is, you know, okay, this is fine. You can view the data like this, but of course, if you wanted to output this to the page, right? We don't know how to do that right now, so we're not going to do exactly that. But I'm asking you to actually imagine that you have to output something like this in some form to the page, right? So of course, you would not output it in this form like array bracket 3 then 0 ABC, right? Plus, this will not be the exact thing that you'll get up here, and what you will get is not something that you would want on your web page, right? So how do you actually do that? You could do that by accessing these elements one by one and then printing them out, and that would work perfectly fine. So that is what traversing is, accessing these elements one by one, and then you could do anything with them. The printing thing is just an example. Traversing basically means accessing this whole array, right? Right. So how do you traverse an array? So let's say I had that same integer array as before, right? And now um, I want to print all these separately and not the array, right? I want to print these on different lines. So how do I do that? So if you remember, everything was referred to through an index, right? So the first element is r0, the next element is r1, the next element is r2, the next is r3, and so on. So you see that the only thing changing is this index in here, which is an integer. So what I'm saying is we could keep a variable here which starts at 0 and then keeps on increasing until a specific value which we'll tell it, and every time we access the element and we print it out. Yeah, so that is how you could do it, right? So just take a moment and try to think about how you could do it. You are actually increasing a variable and you are doing the same thing over and over and over again. So the first thing that should come to mind with that is a loop, right? So if you remember, a loop is used to do something repeatedly, and that is exactly what we are doing here. We are trying to do something repeatedly, right? So what we can do is we can make a for loop, or you could make a while loop too. I prefer for, that's why. And you will mostly see for in traversal of arrays, right? So for var, I've made a var I is equal to 0, and I can do I less than, right? So if you remember, the last index, the last element is always referred by ar.length minus 1. So we want to keep our I less than ar.length. So in this way, if the length is in this case 6, so I will start from 0, which is this element, right? Then it will go to 1, which is this, then it will go to 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. Now it gets to 6. Now add.length is 6, and obviously 6 is not less than 6, so the loop will break at that point of time, and we will get only these 6 values which we were aiming for, right? And here I can do plus plus I. Again, I plus plus or plus plus I both mean that we are increasing the value of I by 1, right? So inside here, we can simply log our element to the console. So I can do array, right? And I can put a semicolon. And now if I refresh my page, I see I get exactly what I was aiming for. I get these elements in a separate form, on separate lines, and they are now, accessible uh, accessible like individually too, not in just an array, right? They are accessible as individual elements too, and you could perform any operation you want with them. Like I could do something like I'll make a string saying ith element is, and now if I refresh the page, I see 0th element is 86. Now of course these three do not make sense because you would have to write some if statements to actually get first instead of 1th, but let's say this is perfectly fine. Let's assume so first element is 78, second element is 92, third element is 100. So you formatted the data as you wanted to, right? This is one thing you could do, or you could do something like calculating the sum of all of these, right? So we could initialize a variable to 0 here, and inside the loop we could do sum plus is equal to array, right? So what's happening is in the starting we are initializing the sum variable to 0, and inside the loop we are every time adding array to the sum, right? So basically we are adding all the elements to 0, which will give us the sum of all the elements in the array, right? And now outside the loop I could do console.log sum of arrays plus sum. And now if I go to this page and I refresh, I get sum of arrays 487, and you could manually add these and verify that this is actually working fine, right? So we saw that you could format the data as you want to, or you could, do some operation on it. In this case, we are adding all of them, and then you could use the final result outside or wherever you want, or you could do whatever you want with the data, right? Or you could also calculate the average, let's say. So if I do, yeah, sum is, and then I do console.log average marks are, that would be sum by add.length, right? And then I'll put this here and I refresh. I see average max are 81.16667, and you see that is how easy it becomes to traverse an array, and that is why you would mostly use arrays. Now you could store these, let's say it was fixed that you will always have 5 variables, 6 variables, so you could make different 6 variables named student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4, student 5, student 6, and you can imagine how tiring and irritating would it be to actually write sum is equal to this plus this plus this plus this plus this, especially in if we had 20 students instead of just 6. So but that doesn't matter here. This will work for even 10,000 students without any problem, right? So you see how this is actually quite helpful in making a list, and you could do anything with this. Let's say you wanted to join all the strings, say this was a string array, and you wanted to join all the strings. So here you could keep it an empty string, and all the strings would be joined in it, and you would in the end get something, what you want. You could try that out, of course. There are various things we could do with this. These are just, quite basic examples. So yeah, this is how you would traverse through an array using a for loop. Now, of course, this could also be done using a while loop. Let's see how. I comment this. And in the while loop, if you remember, we only have the condition inside the bracket. So we'll have to initialize our variable separately, right? So I do var I is equal to 0. And then I do while I is less than i.length. Then I can copy these two lines, paste them here, and I need to add another line saying I plus plus, right? So now I should not expect to see anything changing, and it does not, right? And that is because there is no difference in a while loop and a for loop except the syntax. I'll keep the for loop, I like that. Right. So yeah, these are the two loops you could use. And there's one extra loop which is, specifically made for traversing arrays. You cannot use that for, anything else. It is an loop that you can use for arrays, and that is the for each loop. I'll put a comment saying for each, right? So this is my loop, and how you use that is you do array dot for each. In here you write function, right? Okay, so first of all, I'll output array here, and I'll go into the proto, and you see for each is a function here, right? So this means that this is basically a function inside the array that JavaScript makes by default. So this is not something that you can use on your own, right? And this is a function, basically not a loop, but it works like a loop, right? And one more thing, this syntax right here is not something that you know right now, right? And you will not be comfortable with this, of course, because this is involved. This is actually related to making custom functions of your own, and that we are going to see in a later video really soon, but not yet. So for now, you can just kind of ignore this syntax. I mean, this has to be put here. This is the syntax that you should have, but what this means we'll cover in a later video, which is like probably tomorrow, right? Yeah, so this is what you will have, and in here you will have a variable, right? Again, this is really weird syntax to you right now, but we'll get to what this is in a future video. So basically, if you write something like this, what you are doing is you are using a for each function on an array in which you have something here, and then this is the thing that matters. Now I've written value here. You could write anything, ABC. You could write this too. This would work perfectly fine. And what the significance of this is that now this whole thing that we have right here, this will traverse through the array, and all the elements will get assigned to the value one by one. Just to make that clear, I'll output something like value is plus value. So basically we are printing what the value is, right? What the value variable holds at any point of time. And if I refresh, I see value is 86, value is 78, value is 92, value is 100, value is 60, value is 71, which are basically the elements of the array. So what happened was this whole thing, it traversed through the array, and this variable right here, value, got these values one by one, right? And whatever was written in here was implemented for all of them, right? So this is basically a replacement of this. Of course, you could do something like this with the for loop too, but this is a replacement for this, and this is used quite often for an array. And again, let's first of all, I'll comment these two because they don't make any sense now, right? Or you could do something like and you can expect this to work as well as the previous ones were, right? Sum of arrays 487, average marks are this. So again, this is working perfectly fine, just like the for loop. And you could also have something like, let's say, if your array was let's say I assign hello, then I assign world, and then I use my push method here, add.push, let's say and no banana, right? So now we should have an array which says hello, world, and then banana. And if I refresh, I say value is hello, value is world, value is banana. So we have used this perfectly legally, and this is how you would use it in any scenario, right? Again, this function value and these parentheses, curly parentheses, are not something you are familiar with right now. So I just suggest that you copy this down in your compiler and this should work. And what this actually means, we'll see tomorrow probably. And one last thing that I want to show you is that this could be anything. You could name it X. And then only thing you have to do is use X everywhere inside whenever you need the value. And we see nothing changes here. I refresh again, right? Yeah. So these were the ways in which you could traverse an array. Basically, these are not the ways. It is a single way, but there are multiple loops for doing the same thing. One is the for loop, one is the while loop, and then there is this for each, which is built in inside of an array by default, right? All right. So again, you might not be really comfortable with handling loops till now, and you might understand the syntax, and it might be easy for you to see, okay, this is a loop and this is what's happening. But it is usually not really easy for anybody to think of what to write inside a loop in the beginning. Like if somebody had told me to make a program to do something complex using a loop when I was just starting, I would not have been able to done that. I would not have been able to do that, right? And you will get to that through practice. There's no other way, right? So yeah. So now we've wrapped up arrays for now, and we'll get a better idea of them as we move along, and we'll actually get really comfortable with them, right? Yeah. So that's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one.